I never thought I'd have to fight for my own home. At 52, after working 27 years as a financial advisor, I'd finally paid off my mortgage. My 3-bedroom colonial in the suburbs wasn't extravagant, but it was mine. Every squeaky, floorboard, every crack in the ceiling, and every cherished memory it held. There's something profound about owning a home outright. It represents not just shelter, but security. My parents had always emphasized the importance of owning property, not owing anyone anything. Land is the only thing they aren't making more of, my father used to say. I'd taken his advice to heart after the divorce 12 years ago. While Daniel moved into a sleek downtown apartment with his 26-year-old assistant, now his third wife, I'd invested every spare dollar into paying off the house. The satisfaction of making that final mortgage payment had been worth every sacrifice, every vacation not taken, every dinner out declined. Perhaps that's why what happened felt like more than just an inconvenience or a family disagreement. It was an invasion, a slow-motion theft of something I'd spent my life building. When my younger brother Kevin called last December, his voice cracking as he explained how his construction business had failed after the economic downturn, I didn't hesitate. "Of course you and Meredith can stay with me until you get back on your feet," I said. We'd always been close growing up, and family looks out for family. "It'll just be for a couple of months, Elaine," he promised. "Just until the bank issues clear up and we can get a new apartment. You're a lifesaver." I'd always felt a particular responsibility toward Kevin. Being 5 years older, I'd been the one to walk him to school, to defend him against neighborhood bullies, to help him with homework. When our mother died during his senior year of high school, I'd postponed graduate school to help Dad keep things together. That's just what big sisters do. I cleared out my home office, converting it into a bedroom for them. I bought a new mattress for the pull-out sofa, hung fresh curtains, and even installed additional outlets for their electronics. I stocked the refrigerator with Kevin's favorite foods and put fresh flowers in their room. When they arrived with 4 suitcases and their beloved terrier, Biscuit, I hugged them both tightly and meant it when I said, "My home is your home." I'd met Meredith only a handful of times before they married 3 years ago. She was 15, years younger than Kevin, who himself was 47, a slender woman with carefully highlighted blonde hair and an Instagram account full of home decor inspirations. Their wedding had been elaborate, far more expensive than seemed prudent for a small business owner in an uncertain economy, but I'd kept my concerns to myself. Kevin seemed happy, and that was what mattered. The first few weeks were pleasant. Enough. We fell into a routine. I'd leave for work early while Kevin searched for jobs online, and Meredith, who worked remotely as a social media manager, set up at my dining room table. We'd take turns cooking dinner, and in the evenings, we'd watch movies or play board games like we used to as kids. Kevin seemed genuinely appreciative, helping with household repairs I'd been putting off, fixing the leaky bathroom faucet, replacing the weather stripping on the front door, repainting the guest bathroom. "Least I can do," he'd say, waving off my thanks. Meredith was cordial, if somewhat distant. She spent hours on video calls, her voice drifting from the dining room in an upbeat, professional cadence that contrasted with her cooler demeanor when the laptop closed. Still, she complimented my cooking and occasionally joined Kevin and me for our evening ritual of tea and conversation. But by month 3, the subtle shifts began. Kevin started sleeping later. His job search, once energetic, seemed to have dwindled to occasional scrolling through listings while watching daytime television. Meredith began rearranging things, small things at first. The spice rack reorganized, kitchen utensils relocated. To different drawers, my collection of cookbooks moved to make room for her smoothie machine and air fryer. "Hope you don't mind," she'd say, not quite meeting my eyes. "Just trying to make things more efficient." Meredith's parents, whom I'd met only twice at their wedding, began visiting more frequently, staying for dinner without notice. They were retired, bored, and opinionated, especially her father, Richard, who had strong views on everything from politics to how I loaded my dishwasher. "You're wasting water running it half empty," he'd comment, though it was rarely half empty, just loaded according to my own system, not his. My quiet evenings reading in my favorite armchair were increasingly interrupted by Meredith's video, calls, or her parents' loud opinions about politics, the neighborhood, or their various health concerns. "They're just going through a hard time," I reminded myself, each time I found dishes in the sink or dog hair on my couch. "They'll be moving out soon." I began working later at the office, finding excuses to delay coming home. My colleague Diane noticed. "You used to be the first one out the door at 5, she remarked one evening, finding me still at my desk at 7. "Everything okay at home?" I shrugged, not wanting to seem ungrateful or petty. "Just catching up on some client portfolios." "It's those house guests, isn't it?" Diane persisted. She'd been dubious when I first mentioned Kevin and Meredith moving in. "How long has it been now?" "Almost 3 months, I admitted. "And how much longer will they be staying?" I realized I didn't know. Kevin had stopped mentioning apartment hunting or bank issues. Whenever I gently inquired, he'd change the subject or offer vague assurances that they were working on it. By month 4, I started noticing mail addressed to Meredith's parents arriving at my house. Credit card statements, medical correspondence, even gardening catalogs, all addressed to Richard and Sylvia Barrett at my address. When I casually mentioned it to Kevin, he shrugged. "They're having their mail forwarded here temporarily. Their condo association is having some issues with mail theft." I nodded, though something felt off. That night, I overheard Meredith on the phone. "Mom, she doesn't suspect anything. We're still on track for May." I should have asked questions then, but I didn't want to seem paranoid or untrusting. Kevin was my brother, after all. We shared history, blood, the same crooked smile inherited from our father. Surely, whatever was happening couldn't be as ominous as my intuition suggested. 2 more weeks passed. Small changes continued accumulating. My coffee mug disappeared from its usual hook, replaced by Meredith's collection of branded tumblers. The living room throw pillows I'd hand-selected were stuffed in a closet, replaced with brighter, trendier, ones that matched nothing else in the room. The bathroom cabinet filled with Meredith's expensive skincare products, my simple routine items pushed to the back corner. Then came the Friday that changed everything. I arrived home from work, looking forward to a quiet weekend, perhaps some gardening if the weather held. As I turned my key in the lock, I could hear unfamiliar voices inside, laughter and the clink of glasses. I opened the door to find my living room transformed. The leather sofa and love seat I'd saved for years to purchase had vanished, replaced by a floral sectional I'd never seen before. My carefully curated bookshelves had been rearranged, most of my books relegated to boxes on the floor to make room for decorative items. Glass figurines, framed photos of people I didn't know, artificial plants. The walls, once adorned with artwork I'd collected over decades of travels, now displayed generic canvas prints with inspirational sayings. "Surprise!" Meredith exclaimed when she saw my expression. "We wanted to thank you for letting us stay by updating your decor. Your style was so dated." Her parents stood nearby, champagne glasses in hand, beaming as if they'd just presented me with a priceless gift rather than dismantled my personal space. My things, photos of my parents, the quilt my grandmother had made, books I'd collected over decades, had been boxed up and moved to the garage. "Where's my sofa?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "We donated it," Kevin said, not meeting my eyes. "It was taking up too much space, and this sectional fits the room better." "Donated it?" I repeated, struggling to comprehend. "Without asking me?" "Oh, Elaine," Sylvia chimed in, "don't be so materialistic. Things are just things, and honestly, that old leather was showing its age." I felt something crack inside me, but kept my composure. "I appreciate the thought, but I wish you'd consulted me first. This is still my home." Kevin's face hardened slightly. "We're just trying to help, Elaine. You never were good at accepting help. Or change, Meredith added with a tight smile. I excused myself, claiming fatigue from a long work week, and retreated to my bedroom, the one space still largely untouched, though I noticed with a sinking feeling that some of Meredith's parents' clothing hung in my closet. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, wondering if I was overreacting. Perhaps this was genuine, if misguided gratitude. Perhaps I was too attached to material things, as Sylvia suggested. Perhaps this was what family meant: adapting, compromising, sharing space. But as dawn broke, I knew in my bones that something more calculated was happening. I decided to have a direct conversation with Kevin and Meredith about boundaries and their moving plans. It was time for clarity. But when I came downstairs, Meredith's parents were sitting at my kitchen table, coffee mugs in hand, looking completely at home. "Good morning, Elaine," Sylvia said with a thin smile. "We brought bagels," she gestured to, a paper bag on the counter as if bringing breakfast to my home entitled them to a vote in household decisions. Meredith appeared from the living room, her expression oddly determined. "Elaine, we need to talk." My stomach dropped as Kevin joined us, standing beside his wife. "My parents' condo is being renovated," Meredith announced. "They need a place to stay for a few months, and since you have all this space..." She gestured around my kitchen as if it were a hotel lobby. "I don't think that would work," I said carefully. "It's already crowded with the three of us and..." "Actually," Kevin interrupted, "we've been thinking it through. The basement could be converted into a nice suite for you. It has that half bath, and we could move your bedroom furniture down there." I stared at my brother, this person I'd known my entire life, suddenly a stranger. "You want me to move into my unfinished basement so your in-laws can have my bedroom?" "Just temporarily," Meredith added quickly. 3 months, max." "We'd handle all the moving," Sylvia offered, as if that addressed my concerns. "Richard is very careful with furniture." I looked from face to face, waiting for someone to say this was all a joke. No one did. "This is my house," I said quietly. "I've been happy to help you both, but I'm not moving into my basement." Sylvia clicked her tongue. "Meredith told me you might be difficult about this. After all they've done for you." "What exactly have they done for me?" I asked, my voice controlled despite the anger bubbling inside me. Kevin looked wounded. "We've been keeping you company, Elaine. You were all alone before we came. We've made this place lively again." "I chose to live alone," I replied, "and I was happy." "Were you really?" Meredith asked, her tone suggesting concern while her eyes remained cold. "All by yourself? No wonder you never redecorated. What was the point? When no one was here to appreciate it?" "I appreciated it," I said simply. Richard, who had been uncharacteristically quiet, finally spoke. "Look, Elaine, we understand this is an adjustment, but families support each other. This arrangement makes the most sense logistically. You're just one person. We're 4, 5 when our daughter visits with her kids." "I'm sorry for your renovation issues," I said, standing up, "but this is not going to happen. Kevin and Meredith are welcome to stay in the guest room until they find their own place, but I am not converting my basement into an apartment for myself." The conversation ended in tense silence. I left for a walk to clear my head, and when I returned, the atmosphere was strained but civil. I hoped the matter was dropped. For the next few days, an uneasy truce prevailed. Kevin was quietly apologetic, helping me retrieve some of my books from the garage. Meredith was coolly polite, her interaction with me minimal. Her parents didn't visit, which I counted as a small victory. But the respite was brief. 3 days. Later, I came home from work to find suitcases in the hallway, my suitcases packed with my clothes. Meredith approached me with a bright, artificial smile. "Elaine, perfect timing. We need a small favor." My brother stood behind her, looking uncomfortable but determined. "We're having a family reunion this weekend," Meredith continued. "Kevin's cousins, My parents, my sister and her kids, about 15 people in total. We're having a family party. I looked at my packed bags. And I'm supposed to go… where? Just for the weekend, Kevin added quickly. We got you a nice hotel room downtown, our treat. We need the space, Meredith explained, as if it were perfectly reasonable to evict someone from their own home. And honestly, it might be uncomfortable for you with so many people around. I looked at my brother, searching for any recognition of how outrageous this was. Kevin, this is my house. He couldn't meet my eyes. It's just for a few days, Elaine. Don't make this difficult. I felt a calm settling over me, the kind that comes when you finally see something clearly. I smiled, not because I was happy, but because I suddenly understood exactly what was happening. Let me get my purse, I said quietly. Kevin looked relieved. The reservation is under your name, the Westin downtown. They're expecting you. I nodded and went upstairs to my bedroom, already partially transformed with Meredith's parents' belongings, and closed the door. Instead of getting my purse, I called my friend Clara, an attorney who specialized in real estate law. Clara, I need advice, I said softly into the phone. And possibly your professional services. I explained the situation, the gradual takeover, the redecorating without permission, the attempt to relocate me to the basement, and now this transparent effort to remove me from my own home. Clara's response was immediate and firm. Do not leave your house, Elaine, not even for a night. If you do, they could claim abandonment or that you voluntarily relocated. I'm coming over right now. They've already packed my bags, I told her. Don't touch them, don't move them, don't give any indication that you consent to this arrangement. I'll be there in 30 minutes. While waiting for Clara, I took photos of my packed suitcases in the hallway, the changes to my living room, and the boxes of my belongings in the garage. I found receipts for my furniture, documentation of home improvements I'd made, and most importantly, my mortgage satisfaction letter showing I owned the house outright. I also discovered something disturbing. Mail addressed to Meredith's parents indicating they had sold their condo 2 months ago. This wasn't about a temporary renovation. They had already liquidated their home. An hour later, Clara arrived at my front door. The look of surprise on Meredith's face was almost worth the afternoon's trauma. Elaine, I thought you'd be leaving. For the hotel by now, Meredith said, eyeing Clara suspiciously. Meredith, Kevin, I said calmly. This is Clara Winters, my attorney. She'd like a word with all of us. Kevin emerged from the kitchen, his face paling when I said the word attorney. Let's sit down, Clara suggested, her professional demeanor unflappable. In my living room, now filled with furniture I didn't choose, Clara laid out the legal reality of the situation. As I understand it, she began, you've been staying in Elaine's home as guests, not tenants. You have no lease agreement, have paid no rent, and have made no formal arrangement regarding your occupancy. Is that correct? Kevin nodded slowly. Furthermore, Clara continued, you've now attempted to remove the legal owner from her property and have made unauthorized changes to the home without permission. We were just trying to help, Meredith protested. The furniture was a gift. A gift requires consent to receive, Clara replied evenly. And replacing someone's possessions without permission is not gift-giving. It's conversion of property, potentially a civil offense. She opened her briefcase and removed several documents. I've also discovered that mail for Richard and Sylvia Barrett is being delivered here, and that they sold their condominium 2 months ago. This suggests a pattern of deception and a plan to establish residency for multiple people without the homeowner's knowledge or consent. Meredith's composure slipped. You went through our mail? That's illegal. Actually, Clara corrected, the mail was addressed to this residence, where Elaine is the legal owner and recipient. She has every right to know what's being delivered to her home. Kevin looked shocked. Elaine, this is getting out of hand. We're family. Family doesn't try to steal your home, I replied, finding my voice at last. Steal, Meredith exclaimed. That's absurd. We were going to have you move downstairs, not out completely. Into an unfinished basement with a half bath, I reminded her. While you, Kevin, and your parents took over the main living spaces of a house I've spent decades paying for. Now here's what's going to happen, Clara said, redirecting the conversation. You have exactly 7 days to remove yourselves and your belongings from this property. Any items belonging to Elaine that have been removed, donated, or relocated must be returned or replaced with items of equivalent value. Any damage to the property will be your financial responsibility. You can't throw us out, Kevin said, looking genuinely shocked. We're family. Yes, she can, Clara replied. As non-paying guests without a lease, you have minimal protections under the law. I could have given you 24 hours, but Elaine is being generous with a week's notice. But where will we go? Meredith asked, her confidence crumbling. Perhaps to the home of one of the 15 family members coming for your reunion, I suggested. Clara handed them each a formal document. This is a written notice to vacate. I've also taken the liberty of drafting a list of items that need to be returned or restored. Elaine has been more than generous, but that generosity ends now. What about our parents? Meredith demanded. They've already sold their condo. That's unfortunate, Clara replied, but it's not Elaine's responsibility to house them. They chose to sell their property based on an arrangement that was never agreed to by the homeowner. After Clara left, the house was silent. Kevin and Meredith retreated to their room, and I heard hushed, angry conversations throughout the evening. I slept surprisingly well that night. The weight of uncertainty finally lifted. The next morning, I came downstairs to find Kevin alone at the kitchen table. He looked like he hadn't slept. Meredith's gone to her parents, he said quietly. She took Biscuit. I poured myself a cup of coffee and sat across from him. And the reunion? There isn't one, he admitted. Meredith thought if you left for a weekend, we could convince you that having her parents move in made sense. That maybe you wouldn't come back right away. The betrayal stung, but I'd already processed most of the shock. And you went along with this plan to push me out of my own home? He stared at his hands. Meredith convinced me you'd be happier with a simpler setup, that we could take care of the house better than you could alone, that you wouldn't mind because you never had much attachment to material things. This isn't about material things, Kevin. It's about respect and honesty. He nodded slowly. I know that now. I got caught up in, I don't know, the idea of being the provider, of having a real home to offer Meredith and her family. By taking mine. He had no answer for that. Did you ever actually look for an apartment? I asked. His silence was answer enough. How long were you planning to stay? He sighed. Meredith and her parents had this idea that we could all live here, that eventually you'd either move out or, I don't know, be content with a smaller space in your own house. And you thought I'd agree to this? I thought you might, for family. You've always put family first, Elaine. Always. You stayed home. With Dad when Mom died. You helped me through college. You've never turned me away when I needed help. His voice cracked. I took advantage of that. I'm sorry. I felt tears threatening, but held them back. You're my brother, Kevin. I would do almost anything for you. But this was a betrayal. He nodded. I know. For what it's worth, I didn't know they'd sold their condo. Meredith told me it was just being renovated. I wasn't sure I believed him, but it didn't really matter. The outcome was the same. What will you do now? I asked. I've called a friend who might have a lead on an apartment, and I've applied for a job with Richardson Construction. He looked up tentatively. I know I have no right to ask, but is there any way I could stay here alone until I get back on my feet? Just me, not Meredith or her family. I'd sleep on the couch, stay out of your way. I considered it briefly, then shook my head. "No, Kevin. I think we both need space right now." Kevin moved out that day. I helped him pack, both of us working in near silence. Before he left, he paused at the door. "I'm sorry, Elaine. I really am. I don't know how I let things get so twisted. I believed he was sorry, but some breaks can't be easily mended. I hope you find your way, Kevin, but it won't be by taking from others." After he left, the house felt oddly empty despite Meredith, and her parents' furniture still occupying much of the space. I walked through each room, cataloging what was missing, what had been changed, what needed to be restored. The next day, Meredith returned with her parents and a moving truck. They were coldly efficient, removing the sectional, the new decor, their personal belongings. Richard made a point of commenting on the wasted space in my 3-bedroom home for just one person. But Sylvia shushed him. "We're lucky she's not pressing charges," I overheard her whisper. As they prepared to leave, Meredith approached me with a box. "These are some of your things we found when we were moving out. And the receipt for your sofa. It wasn't actually donated. It's in storage at Public Storage on Elm Street, Unit 47. Here's the key." I accepted the box and key without comment. "For what it's worth," she added, not quite meeting my eyes. "It wasn't supposed to happen this way. We were going to offer to buy the house from you eventually, give you a fair price." "It's not for sale," I said simply. "Everyone has a price," she replied, a flash of her true self showing through. "We just miscalculated yours." After they left, I called Clara again, this time to change the locks. Then I called a storage company to retrieve my sofa and other furniture. Over the next week, my home slowly became mine again. Clara helped me document everything and sent formal letters to Meredith and her parents demanding the return of my belongings. Most came back, though my grandmother's quilt was never found. I changed the locks, installed a security system, and had my brother's name removed from my emergency contact information. I painted my living room a rich, bold blue, something I'd always wanted to do but had put off. I bought new furniture, not to replace what I'd lost, but to give myself a fresh start. Diane from work came over to help me rearrange everything. "Your brother really did a number on you," she commented as we hung new curtains. "Are you going to press charges?" "No," I said, "but I'm not going to pretend it didn't happen either." 3 months later, I received a letter from Kevin. He and Meredith had separated. He was living in a small apartment and had found work with a construction company in the next town. He asked for forgiveness, not for a place to stay. "I've been thinking a lot about what happened," he wrote. "About how I let Meredith and her parents convince me that what we were doing was okay, that you wouldn't mind, or that you'd get over it. I realize now that I betrayed not just your trust, but everything our parents taught us about respect and honesty. I don't expect you to forgive me, but I want you to know that I understand what I did wrong." I wrote back, "Not with forgiveness, exactly, but with an acknowledgement that healing might be possible someday. Family is complicated, and while I couldn't trust him in my home again, I wasn't ready to excise him from my life completely." 6 months after that, we met for coffee at a neutral location. The conversation was stilted at first, but gradually eased. He was sober now, a revelation that explained some of his poor decision-making but didn't excuse it. He was rebuilding his life one day at a time. "I'm saving for my own place," he told me. "Nothing fancy, just a small condo I can actually afford. A place that's mine in the way your house is yours." I nodded, understanding the significance of his words. A year after the incident, I invited Kevin to dinner at my home, alone without Meredith, who by then was his ex-wife. We ate at my new dining table, surrounded by walls I'd painted myself, artwork I'd chosen, in a space that was unquestionably mine. "You've made it beautiful again," he said, looking around. "It was always beautiful," I replied. "It just needed to be mine again. As for my house, it's more deeply mine now than ever before." Every morning I walk through rooms that I reclaimed, touch walls that I defended, and sit in spaces that are arranged exactly as I want them. There's a power in that, in knowing that I didn't shrink or surrender when pressured. I've learned that boundaries aren't selfish, they're necessary. That helping others doesn't mean sacrificing yourself. That sometimes kindness means opening your door to those in need. But sometimes, wisdom means knowing when to close it. Most importantly, I've learned that the house I fought for isn't just a building with my name on the deed. It's a reflection of who I am, resilient, intentional, and unwilling to be diminished. In reclaiming my space, I reclaimed myself. Sometimes late at night, I sit in my living room with a cup of tea, surrounded by the quiet comfort of my own choices, and I feel a profound gratitude. Not just for the walls and roof that shelter me, but for the hard-won wisdom that now protects me as surely as any lock or alarm system. My home is mine again, and so am I.